Right now, 1 in 9 people in the Atlanta area do not have regular access to basic healthy food. That's because either of the cost or where they live. Tonight, a new multi-million-dollar program is out there to help them. Atlanta News First, Yasmina Alston live at 5 near Donnelly Hollowell Parkway in Northwest Atlanta. And Yasmina, the mayor just made a major announcement to help those struggling the most.
Tracy, he did, and this corridor in Northwest Atlanta is one of the underserved communities that will benefit from this funding. This is all about getting people access to healthy food in particular. We learned today that 98% of disinvested neighborhoods in Atlanta include areas that lack access to healthy food. A nearly $3 million investment from America's Healthy Food Financing Initiative will go towards the Atlanta Food Access Investment Initiative. This will provide low interest rate loans to businesses enhancing food access to underserved communities and help with research on the food retail landscape in certain areas. We spoke with a local nonprofit today about the importance of being able to get healthy food.
When you think about people who live in food insecure areas where there's not a high level of grocery stores or things that are affordable for them, it's important for us to put out quality foods to people that they can get to at no charge.
Invest Atlanta and ACE are working together to make this initiative happen in the city. The goal is to find to address immediate needs for that food, as well as find long-term solutions. Live in Northwest Atlanta, Yasmina Alston, Atlanta News First.